Let me start by declaring my support for the Whitley women. Jessica and Ainsley got shit done. Before we get started, subscribe to my channel for Prodigal Son and Killing Eve content. I have a few analysis videos of the Whitley family that will be coming out weekly. We ended the last episode on Malcolm getting arrested. This episode starts with him being in prison with Martin. He's freaking out. I'm not a killer. I'm not like you. And then we find out it's just a dream. Malcolm gets bailed out. Danny and JT inform him that he will be on house arrest. JT attaches his ankle monitor and Jessica takes him home. Martin wakes up in his cell. His door is open and a phone is ringing. The phone is outside his cell. He walks over and picks it up. It's Nicholas. They talk. Nicholas says something about punishment and the alarms at Claremont ring, and Martin gets quote-unquote caught running away. Okay, so Nicholas and Martin are being evil. But where is Mr. David? He would have never let this happen. Again, nothing can happen to Mr. David. At the Milton house, Malcolm is trying to escape, and this show has really done a number on its audience when escaping house arrest and Malcolm knowing how to escape house arrest is completely normal. And much safer than a lot of other shit he does. Also, being framed for murder was on everybody's Prodigal Son bingo since the second episode. Gil arrives and Malcolm quickly runs to his room, like a son doing something he doesn't want his dad to see, and Jessica covers for him. As they are talking, I remembered that they kissed. For us, that was last week. For the characters, that was yesterday. And then Gil kicked down the door to Jessica's son's house, and now they are here. Also, when Malcolm is trying to escape earlier in the scene, we see the knife drawer in the living room. Keep that in mind, it will come in handy later. By the time Gil leaves, Malcolm has already removed his ankle monitor and attached it to Leonard. Yes, that Leonard, the one Jessica told to dress business casual in the 11th episode. That one. He is so innocent. Okay, Leonard needs to be added to the list of another Whitley acquaintance that needs to be protected. We cut to the morgue. Idrissa is giving her analysis. She doesn't believe that Malcolm did it because there is no drama in the crime. Danny and JT seem pretty convinced though that it could be Malcolm. They aren't even doubting it, and I get it, but I don't like it. Once they leave, Malcolm steps out of the shadows. They try to figure out at what point Malcolm's DNA could have been planted on the victim. They think that the evidence processing company that the cops use could have been compromised. Maybe Nicholas owns it. Malcolm Googles it and is about to leave. Idrissa stops him, hugs him tightly, and tells him not to die. For once, the moment between them did not feel forced and awkward. Malcolm reassures her that he isn't going to die and walks out, and Idrissa says, "He didn't want me to kiss him, right?" And we're back to the typical Malcolm and Idrissa dynamic. Malcolm visits the guy Jessica called the devil. Malcolm manipulates him and we find out why Jessica calls him the devil. He tells Malcolm about how Nicholas bought the DNA testing company so that he could have people get away with crime. There is a noise and the gunman shoots Mr. Devil? Let's go with that. Let's call him Mr. Devil. Because I really don't know his name. I can't remember his name. As he's dying, he tells Malcolm that Martin is the only one who knows the way to bring Nicholas down. Now Martin is in regular person prison, and this guy tells him that there is a large bounty on his head. Martin asks for his help, and he just tells him that, "Dude, we aren't friends. I am just explaining to you why I'm going to have to kill you." Malcolm comes back home, shirt bloody. Ainsley asks where he came from, i.e. the secret tunnel under their house, so far exclusively used by serial killers. He explains everything to Ainsley and Jessica. Leonard comes in, tells Malcolm that Wi-Fi doesn't work in his room. Look, I know that he's innocent, but Leonard, there is blood on Malcolm's shirt. Wi-Fi is really not the biggest concern right now. Jessica tells him to give him his shirt to Malcolm and he starts stripping. The team knocks on the door. Malcolm asks for 30 seconds. Then Jessica opens the door. The team asks Malcolm where he's been. Ainsley and Jessica jump to his defense. Malcolm, being Malcolm, asks them how the case is going. None of them are willing to speak, and they are about to leave when Malcolm confesses that he did it. He went to see the Mr. Devil guy. Jessica is like, "What in the name of all that is holy are you doing, Malcolm?" Ainsley figures out that he is getting the cops to take him in. Gil just gives the exasperated, "This family. And ain't that the truth?" At the station, Danny tells Malcolm that he needs to stop lying to them, to which Malcolm replies that they need to start believing him. And JT is like, "Do you guys need a moment alone?" Malcolm instantly takes control of the conversation, standing up. And for a second he gets distracted, asking if he can stand. Suspects can't usually stand. I mean, I know that this is a serious show, but this show really does so much to bring humor and maybe dark humor, but humor to the crime and the drama. Malcolm asks about who actually killed the assassin. How did they get access? They theorize that when Malcolm saw Eddie, he might have already been dead, since Malcolm didn't even go near him. It becomes a real possibility. Danny tells Malcolm that Endicott only fears one man, Martin. Malcolm confesses that he can't get in touch with anyone at Claremont. Gil informs him that Martin isn't anymore at Claremont. He'd been transferred to Gen Pop, which it took me a while to realize that Gen Pop meant general population. And they work out that Martin could be dead by the end of the day. Gil lets him go, saying that they don't have evidence, but Mr. Gil, there was DNA evidence. You can't say you don't have evidence. Gil asks how he was going to get into the prison. With Ainsley's help, of course. They visit Martin in prison, and Martin does not look good. They ask him about what he had on Endicott, and turns out he had nothing. It was a bluff, which means that Malcolm will go to prison for murder. Ainsley tells them to solve the murder. That is, after all, what they do. They try to, but Martin has nothing. Martin tells Malcolm that there is still a way to save his family. He must kill Endicott. Ainsley defends him, saying that he isn't a killer. Martin says that he is a Whitley. He's about to be taken out, and he starts talking about how he loves them and they are the greatest achievements, and Ainsley just tells him to hell with his last words. He is the smartest person in here, and he better start acting like it. We see a shot of her hand on Martin, and this is the first indication that Martin is realizing that maybe he has been focusing on the wrong Whitley. Gil comes to Malcolm's apartment and tells him that they are getting a warrant for his arrest and that he should run. We finally get that hug between Gil and Malcolm, but under what circumstances? When Gil wakes up, he better hug everyone, and on screen. Malcolm is listening to Eve's message when he notices the dogs in the recording. He calls Danny and asks her to trace that call. Jessica is with Endicott and ill. Nicholas tells her how he got Martin in prison and all for Jessica because he is head over heels for her. Again, ew. And I think Jessica is thinking just about the same thing. He gets called away and asks Jessica not to leave, but she does. Nicholas is talking to Gil, who has been warned by Malcolm that Jessica might try to make a deal with Endicott. He is there to take Jessica back to her home, and Nicholas starts being sleazy again. Okay, I have tried to like this character. Prodigal Son is a show with such complex characters. Even back in the beginning when everyone was suspicious of Jessica, then Ainsley, and then Eve, I wasn't. Not in the way that they are bad people, but this guy. There is not a single good thing I can say about him. Like, even if I can appreciate his skills, I am so disgusted by his presence that it just flies out the window. He's like the Umbridge of this show. He then has Gil stabbed. Jessica sees everything and goes back in, tries to call the cops, but Nicholas is coming. She pretends to be okay and then slams a plate into his head. And you know what? Good for her. She runs out. Gil is gone. She grabs the keys and gets into his car. And I thought she was going to drive to the cops, but she waits for Endicott's lackey and smashes into his car, rescues Gil, and takes him to a hospital, all while wearing heels. What a queen. Malcolm follows the lead and finds Eve's sister, Sophie. She's the one that killed the assassin, and I thought, this is such a terrible situation. So much has happened to this girl, and now she might go to jail for avenging her sister. But then Malcolm decides to take the fall for it. He really is his mother's son. At the hospital, Malcolm consoles Danny. They are ready to nail Endicott. Malcolm gets an SOS from Ainsley. He gets to the Milton house, and Endicott is sitting next to Ainsley, who has tears in her eyes. What the hell did he say to her? We know that Ainsley isn't someone who is easily shaken, and given what happens later, he must have said some really terrible things. Endicott then goes on about how he has Malcolm nailed, and Malcolm pulls a gun on him. We get to see the struggle, the questions racing in his mind. Endicott knows that he won't pull his trigger. He is his mother's son after all. He starts talking in the way narcissistic, self-important douchebags do, and suddenly Ainsley's behind him, cutting open his neck, and then she goes full psycho and stabs him multiple times. Malcolm gets a call from Martin saying that he took Ainsley's advice. Malcolm tells him that she took his. Martin is overjoyed and coos, "My girl." And that is how we end the episode, on 3 cliffhangers. I swear, if this show doesn't get a second season, I think it will, simply by popular demand. But then again, Fox is the same network that canceled Lucifer after season 3, which had amazing ratings at the time, by the way. I doubt that they'd make the same mistake again. They'd be stupid to let this show go just on the basis of the acting talent that might go to waste. Michael Sheen, Bellamy Young, Tom Paine. It'd be the worst business decision if they don't pick it up. But I really hope they do. I see you next time. Sending love. Toodles!